This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw. Join the conversation on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Phuket Live Radio.
Hello and welcome to the news. A lot of local, national, international news on the program today. Now, whose maps are they going to use to define Cambodia and Vietnam's borders? Which country has agreed to take more Australian processed refugees? Who is happy and well up there in Chonburi? And which bank has opened a branch in Yangon, Myanmar? All this and more will cross to the Phuket News Centre for the latest local and national news. Keep you up to date with the news from London. This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw, brought to you by the Kids Club Phuket. This is where you don't miss a thing. We keep you up to date with the stories making news. You're going to get all the news you need here, courtesy of the Kids Club Phuket on the Phuket News Hour. Lots of news on the way.
The news you need to know. This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw.
Looking at the refugee crisis, not in Europe but in Asia, Nauru, which has been a location where those seeking asylum in Australia have been sent. They were not to be processed in Australia. The Immigration Minister for Australia, Peter Dutton, has met Cambodia's strongman Prime Minister Hun Sen to salvage a $55 million agreement with the impoverished nation to resettle more refugees in Cambodia from Nauru. Now, this comprises a $40 million aid payment and 15 million Australian dollars for the use of resettlement of refugees. Now, this was only days after declaring it had no plans to resettle more than the 4 refugees who arrived in June of this year. Cambodia says it's now ready to take more in groups of 4 and 5. This breakthrough came after the Immigration Minister for Australia, Peter Dutton, flew to the Cambodian capital Phnom Penh from Europe, where he had held talks on Europe's migration crisis. And Australia has agreed now to take 12,000 Syrian refugees based on the current Middle East crisis. Back to Cambodia, Mr Dutton said meetings were held with Mr Hun Sen and the country's powerful Interior Minister, and the reinforcement of the commitment of both nations to the successful implementation of the resettlement arrangements of refugees from Nauru. Now, these refugees effectively are being tempted from Nauru to resettle in Cambodia. Currently, the 4 refugees there are in a rented villa, arguably luxury accommodation by Cambodian standards. They're being paid a stipend, they're being taught the Cambodian language, and the Australian immigration officials are seeking to assist them with employment. It seems a very expensive solution for the processing of individuals who were not allowed to be processed in Australia, sent to Nauru, and then tempted to move from Nauru to Cambodia and for resettlement. That story from the Sydney Morning Herald, smh.com.au, by Lindsay Murdoch, Southeast Asia correspondent for Fairfax Media. Still in Cambodia, the Cambodian Times is reporting that Prime Minister Hun Sen said on Tuesday has ordered police to arrest anyone who accuses the government of using, quote, fake maps and ceding national territory amid an ongoing political dispute over the demarcation of Southeast Asia's nation's borders with neighbouring Vietnam. We brought you this story last week. Remember, the French were going to provide original colonial maps so that those in Vietnam and Cambodia could compare the borders now to what they were when the French were colonising Cambodia. During a 3-hour televised speech, Hun Sen volunteered to step down if his government's maps and sets of maps loaned to Cambodia by France last week to help to resolve the dispute did not match. Now, the opposition Cambodia National Rescue Party, CNRP, has accused the government of ceding land to Vietnam based on a set of maps that adhere to a 1985 agreement signed by the two countries during Vietnam's occupation of Cambodia, and which the opposition has never recognised. On September the 3rd, France delivered maps produced by its National Geographic Institute prior to Cambodia's independence in 1953, which, hours after receiving, Cambodian officials declared a match to the charts used by the government to demarcate the 1,228-kilometre, 763-mile border with Vietnam. That story from the Cambodian Times. More news on the way. This is the Phuket News Hour, brought to you by the Kids Club Phuket.
Missed something? No problem. Listen to the Phuket News Hour any time of the day. Programs posted daily on the phuketnews.com/radio and on our Facebook page, Phuket Live Radio.
The Australian Broadcasting Corporation, abc.net.au, is reporting that an Australian woman of Vietnamese origin has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for trying to smuggle heroin in her underwear, according to state media. The woman, 38, was caught with 376 grams of the drug at Ho Chi Minh City's Tan Son Nhat airport in December last year. She told the court she was planning to transport the drugs from Vietnam to Australia for a fee of $5,000. The court in the southern Vietnamese city sentenced her to 20 years imprisonment for the charge of illegal transport of drugs. Anyone found guilty of possessing more than 600 grams of heroin or more than 20 kilograms of opium can face the death penalty. Convictions and sentences are usually revealed only by the local media, which is strictly under state control. Vietnam has sentenced dozens of foreigners to death for drug offences, many of them Australian nationals of Vietnamese origin, but it has been decades since a foreign national was executed in the country. The Communist government also enforces compulsory rehabilitation programs for the country's estimated 140,000 drug addicts, which rights groups have strongly criticised, pointing to allegations of forced labour and abuse. Despite the harsh sentencing, drug smuggling and use is still commonplace. That story from abc.net.au. Moving to the Bangkok Post, 2 Thai nationals were found guilty of a 2009 Australian Good Samaritan murder. These 2 men repeatedly stabbed a Good Samaritan as he tried to defend his sister-in-law from a brutal assault in Australia, and they were found guilty of that man's murder this past Wednesday. The 2 men showed no reaction as the verdict was delivered at the Victorian Supreme Court. They will be sentenced later. A 3rd Thai national earlier pleaded guilty to killing the man in Australia and testified against his former friends. He was sentenced last month to 15 years in a prison with a minimum term of 11 years. The guilty verdict ends 6 years of efforts to bring the killers of the man, Chef Luke Mitchell, aged 29, to justice, and it required the Thai men's extradition from Thailand. The fatal incident began outside a nightclub on Sydney Road in Brunswick, Melbourne. The man, one of the Thais, the owner of the traditional massage parlour on Sydney Road, was drinking whiskey with his friends when they began arguing with a woman outside the business. They then attacked a bystander who told them to back off, hurting the woman. After the murder, the 3 men fled Australia and later that day before being arrested in Thailand, and they were extradited back to Melbourne. This was unique police work combining the work of the Victorian Police, the Royal Thai Police, and the use of an extradition law that dates back many, many decades to the early 19th century in an original extradition arrangement between the United Kingdom, Britain and the Kingdom of Thailand. More news on the way. This is the Phuket News Hour.
Your daily news fix, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. Only on Live 89.5.
Hey mums and dads, if you're looking for a great place for the kids to have fun, there's only one place to consider. The Kids Club Phuket. It's opposite Jung Salong in the Promenade Mall there, 2nd floor, 800 square metres of air-conditioned comfort. It's the amazing new and unique indoor playground for children. And at the Kids Club Phuket, your children finally have the perfect place to have fun, let off some steam, socialise and even learn something new. While you pop across the road to Jung Salong, go and have a facial, do some shopping, have a kid-free meal. The Kids Club Phuket, open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m, 7 days a week. The best place for your kids to have fun. If you want to know more, go to thekidsclubphuket.com or check out facebook.com, The Kids Club Phuket, proud sponsors of the Phuket News Hour.
Your daily news fix, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. Only on Live 89.5.
Great news from Chonburi near Bangkok. The Age newspaper's Southeast Asia correspondent Lindsay Murdoch reports that 12 months ago, baby Gammy was chronically unwell with a heart condition and abandoned in Thailand by his Australian biological parents. But hands across the water. The Australian charity that is caring for the Down syndrome toddler says his transformation has been nothing short of remarkable. Hands Across the Water was established after the 2004 tsunami and assisted young orphan Thai children near Khao Lak, and as a result has now opened up orphanages and care respite centres right throughout Thailand. The charity, releasing photographs of a happy-looking boy, said that at one stage he was incredibly sick with his life in the balance. The charity website Facebook page says, "Now look at him, a true reflection of love and happiness." When Fairfax Media revealed Gammy's plight last year, donors from all over the world gave more than 235,000 Australian dollars, which Hands Across the Water is using to assist the baby and his family, who live in the Chonburi village near Bangkok. Gammy's mother, Patramon Chanbua, has obtained Australian citizenship for the baby, allowing him to receive medical and other benefits in Australia if necessary. The abandonment of Gammy by his biological parents from Western Australia prompted Thailand's military rulers to shut down the country's then booming surrogacy industry. Earlier this year, Hands Across the Water rebuffed attempts by the Western Australian biological father to gain access to donations raised for baby Gammy. The Farnells from Western Australia are caring for Gammy's twin sister Piper at their home in Western Australia. Part of the use of the money by the charity was to buy a home in the name of baby Gammy. So as the young boy suffering from Down syndrome grows up, his mother, his siblings will be under a roof, safe and sound. And with the support of Hands Across the Water, this organisation is helping one little Thai boy, but not the only little Thai boy or girl that needs assistance in the kingdom. That story from Lindsay Murdoch, Southeast Asia correspondent for The Age newspaper in Melbourne. This is the Phuket News Hour. More news on the way.
The stuff you need to know. 60 minutes of news on the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw.
Okay, Hollywood blockbuster fans, have we got news for you, particularly if you're listening in Singapore. The internet television network Netflix will launch in Singapore in early 2016. Once launched, internet users in Singapore will be able to subscribe to Netflix and instantly watch a curated selection of popular TV shows and movies on nearly any internet-connected screen. The central hub in Southeast Asia, Singapore, has a sophisticated and diverse place that we will find much to love about the Netflix service, according to Netflix CEO Reed Hastings. Netflix said it will open an office in Singapore in the coming months, making it the hub for expanding its operations in Asia. And the company added that it will also launch its service in South Korea, Hong Kong and Taiwan in 2016 as well. That news from Channel News Asia. Moving to Myanmar, the Myanmar Times reports that the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, ICBC, opened its Yangon branch yesterday, becoming the sole Chinese bank undertaking commercial operations in Myanmar. Now, ICBC, which is the world's largest bank with a market capitalization of $240 billion US, was one of 9 foreign banks to be granted a provisional license by the Central Bank of Myanmar last October. The 9 banks were given a year to secure the final green light from the central bank and open a branch office, becoming the first foreign institutions to operate commercially in Myanmar since 1963. ICBC is the 8th bank to open. Only the Australia and New Zealand Banking Group, ANZ, still needs to open its office before the October deadline. That story from the Myanmar Times. Let's check the latest in foreign exchange rates. Bangkok Bank is reporting that $1 will buy you 35.07 baht, 54.72 Great British Pound, 1 Singapore dollar 25.01 baht, the Australian dollar 24.46, and looking to the euro 40.01. You're up to date with your foreign exchange. More news on the way. This is the Phuket News Hour.
Today's important stories and the island's best music. This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw.
That's it for the program today. Thank you so much for your company. Great to have been able to bring you the latest news locally, nationally and internationally here on the Phuket News Hour. This program produced and presented by Tim Shaw, associate producer Chara Revitt. Happy birthday, Chara Revitt. We use the resources of the World Wide Web, the BBC, CNN, the Bangkok Post, the Phuket News Centre, the Vientiane Times, the Cambodian Times and the Straits Times. Stay tuned and make sure that you listen to the Phuket News Hour Monday through Friday, 11am to midday, the catch-up program 6am, Tuesday to Saturdays. Don't forget to the podcast of the highlights of the program, facebook.com Phuket Live Radio, or go straight to phuketliveradio.com. Have a great remainder of the day. Did I mention it was Chara Revitt's birthday? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you, Chara Revitt. Okay, Okay, I won't sing. This is Tim Shaw signing off for the Phuket News Hour. You have a great day. I know Chara will. Bye for now.
This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw. Join the conversation on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Phuket Live Radio.